Working from home or from the office? What are the key challenges when implementing hybrid models, and are we close in finding new equilibrium in this area? Today my guest is Dorota Osiecka, partner and director at Colliers Define.
We take the benefits of in-office presence and remote work and everything's beautiful. It doesn't work like that. How well your teams communicate within themselves and between teams, measure your level of innovation, measure the sense of belonging, measure various aspects of your organizational culture. Something that is really worth considering. Make sure you do something that makes your people want to be there, if you need them there. But the first question you need to ask yourself is, why do I want them there?
Talk about this very engaging topic where I believe that the perspective of employees and employers is a little bit different. So let's look at the recent report you published. Welcome to our studio.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
And I'm really curious what we've learned after around 4 years of working in the hybrid models, where we are, what are the challenges. Let's start maybe with the takeaways from your report.
Initially, flexible work has been with us for quite some years, even before the COVID pandemic, but the pandemic caused it to go widespread. And the go-to model was same solution for everyone, roughly 50-50, because it seemed sensible and prudent. What we see now is a lot more diversification between companies and within companies as well. The challenges evolve as well. So initially it was more about how we make this transition. Are we ready in terms of being able to support hybrid interactions or remote interactions, making sure that we have the right tools and the right policies and procedures to handle people being not being present by default. And in terms of the sort of key challenges from employer-employee perspective, where around work-life balance, this kind of hybrid or remote work hygiene, where we had to kind of learn and acquire new habits. That is pretty much past us in terms of how companies operate. But that means also that there's a new set of challenges where we've learned to operate in hybrid mode. We have learned very well to consume the benefits of this model, and there are many.
Let's name them, maybe. That's a good moment.
Well, the things that...
Especially from the perspective of employers, maybe let's first, yes, because probably maybe they are more obvious from the perspective of the employees.
Yeah, the research we've done was addressed to management of major companies operating on the Polish market. And the impacts that they report as positive, so the areas where they report hybrid work having a positive impact on their operations and on the organization are work-life balance, which would be the same for the employees typically, although there are still some challenges, but generally on the whole it's reported as positive. Recruitment. That's not a surprise. Nearly 65% of companies report a positive impact of hybrid work on recruitment, which is pretty intuitive because when you look at it, you have a wider talent pool if you're willing to employ from a sort of larger catchment area than a standard half an hour or an hour commute. Mm-hmm. So that's quite obvious. There's a chance to introduce more equality. For example, in terms of employing people with disabilities, in terms of employing neurodiverse people, in terms of employing working mothers. There are some downsides as well, because there's the employees who work more remotely in a hybrid company may face issues like being overlooked for promotions or other sort of managerial issues, but on the whole, it's a positive. Mm-hmm. It's a positive example. Now, and then the last area that is prominently perceived as positive by employers is retention, mm-hmm. And indeed flexibility in how I work is one of the key things one of the key considerations in job decisions today.
But that is about young people or in general?
No, that's across the board.
Okay.
That's across the board. It's one of the first things that people look apart from sort of job fit and salary and compensation levels. And what happens is the risk areas or the areas where managers report adverse effects, negative impacts of hybrid work or remote, are quite important areas of this for the organization. It's around sense of belonging. It's around collaboration. It's around how information is circulated, how knowledge is shared. So onboarding and training and all the other things. Generally, organizational culture. The trouble is that those are things that are typically very difficult to measure.
Yeah, but I understand. But that's very much, a focus on the business culture, on the social, let's say, workplace, right?
Definitely.
But we also have like kind of productivity, which has an impact on the business side of things. And I'm wondering, are there any data related to that aspect?
Well, productivity is a never-ending topic. It is extremely difficult to measure in an objective fashion. And also it has many, many dimensions. Again, because one, I prefer to speak about effectiveness rather than productivity. And again, there are different dimensions. For example, can I work fast and do I produce a lot of output? That's one measure of so-called productivity. I would call it efficiency. But that doesn't necessarily mean the fact that I can do something efficiently doesn't necessarily mean that that's what I should be doing. There's this dimension, collective dimension of whether we are being efficient, but we are also going in the right direction. So it's not about just being fast. It's about making sure that we work collectively and we work towards a common goal. And that is a lot more difficult to measure. And this is again where this collective side comes into play. So we do see symptoms, and there's a lot of anecdotal evidence around declining levels of innovation, about things that at the end of the day will ultimately impact the bottom line. But it's not something that you can actually point a finger on and kind of measure in specific units at this stage. But definitely there is this tension between being able to work fast and efficient in terms of individual productivity, individual output, versus whether collectively we're doing the right things and whether collectively we're getting closer, whatever goals we might have as a team.
But knowing all about these challenges, but also the benefits, I'm sure that, by the time you companies manage to find the solution that can facilitate the process to make it well, collectively. So I'm wondering from your experience, but also from the report, what are the best practices in a way that the hybrid model really works for everyone, for employer and for employees? Putting maybe even managers in the middle. I'm wondering where to place managers, because we were also discussing this topic, right? That in this hybrid model, the role of the middle managers, yes, it's really difficult now, yes?
Yeah, flexibility is difficult to manage. So managers do struggle. They feel the burden, they feel overworked, they are threatened with burnout and many other negative effects. So they are the ones that should be taken care of the most and supported the most. So definitely one direction to look at is how do we support our leaders, how do we support our managers in making sure that they step up to the challenge. The second thing is the complexity that I just mentioned. There's no you can't manage complexity by applying some standard things that worked elsewhere. That's just not how it works. So you need to be able to sense, probe, experiment, and you need to, as an organization, have this freedom to be able to do that, to correct the course, to pivot, to see what's working. And paradoxically, again, this is something that comes up in our research very, very consistently. Hybrid is often perceived as the sort of the happy marriage of two worlds. We know how to work in the office. We've learned to work remotely. Some of us years before, some of us just recently due to the whole COVID upheaval. So now we take the benefits of in-office presence and remote work, and everything's beautiful. It doesn't work like that. It turns out that both employees and managers report much better results, both in office-only and remote-only models. So the hybrid is the most difficult. It's not a happy marriage of the best of things of two worlds. It's actually where the challenges become most apparent. Because you can't really operate the way we were used to being office-based, and we haven't really yet learned how to operate in a remote manner, and most companies will never go fully remote. So, but an advice, and definitely an area to focus on when you look at making sure that that your hybrid, that your dispersed workforce is healthy and that your organization is healthy in a hybrid mode, is build your processes, politics, communication, tools, and everything, all the sort of gears that make the organization go forward, build them as if you were a remote company. And then take advantage of the face-to-face time, intently planned. It needs to be a lot more intentional. It really doesn't cut it just to have people in the same space at the same time. You need to make sure that it is something that is worth the commute, that it is something that really makes them want to be there, and it is something that contributes to whatever team goals and whatever major priorities we have as a team. But everything else should be built as if you were a remote company, because then you are able to kind of hedge to some extent the risks of dispersion. But they'll never fully go away. So the last bit of advice that I would have is make sure you measure. Make sure you measure things that are important, and those would be things around not just your employees' satisfaction and engagement. That is something that thankfully is pretty common. Most organizations measure those factors, but measure things like how well your teams communicate within themselves and between teams, measure your level of innovation, measure the sense of belonging, measure various aspects of your organizational culture.
And I'm wondering also in terms of, because obviously employers, I understand they would prefer to attract people to come to office. It's more common and easier maybe to manage teams. So I'm wondering whether, we had so many discussions about whether it's a stick or a carrot discussion, how to attract people to the office. And we've heard about many different ways of how to attract people by force or by motivating them. One of the arguments is, of course, that, for example, within the rules in the companies, you are actually not able to be promoted. You actually mentioned also this aspect. Yes, if you are not in the company, because of course you may stay in the company, it's absolutely fine to be remotely. But if you want to go further with the company, also another aspect is for the people who are just coming to our companies, young people who are just starting, probably, having somebody next to you who is more senior, who can give you advice sitting next to your office is a little bit different type of experience than, having remotely, when you probably just focus on the tasks, you just process what you have to do, what's on your agenda, right? So I'm wondering whether any advice on this, looking at the Polish market.
Yeah, I love this topic. Again, it's a never-ending story. In terms of the Hybrid and Beyond report is based on research that we do consistently that we have been doing consistently over the past 3 years. So we can identify, having measured exactly the same things across a span of time, we can identify some trends. And the funny thing is that the level of employers who report that they try to encourage people to be in the office, to encourage more office presence amongst their employees, remains relatively stable. 3 years ago, it was, I believe, around 60%, then it went up a little bit and then went down. So it's roughly around 60% of employers who say they would like to see their people more often in the office. But among those who encourage people to come, the percentage of organizations that report encountering resistance has grown vastly. It's gone from 66 to 88% this year. Most companies do not want to be very strict on that. So they try to encourage in a number of soft ways. They try to make sure that people, and that is actually probably something that is really worth considering. Make sure you do something that makes your people want to be there, if you need them there. But the first question you need to ask yourself is, why do I want them there? And the second question is that you need to ask yourself is, how do I make sure that my people understand why do I want them here? Because again, a common misconception between employers and employees is that it's about just micromanagement and control. In some cases it is, but I would say it's a very small minority of cases. In most cases, employers simply see those signs of risks and are trying to counteract. Whether forcing office presence is an effective countermeasure, I would say not necessarily. But again, there's no easy answers to difficult questions. It's such a complex, interconnected and fluid state of things that you need to make sure that you take the right decisions considering all the factors in your specific context. So, yeah.
Yeah, so looking into the future, do you think we can, get to some new equilibrium on the market, looking at those topics we discuss, or it's more about, some new disruptors that are, somewhere around, even looking at the macroeconomic, of course, looking on one hand, we have still very stable unemployment rate in Poland, but we know that situation is very dynamic in terms of the even, sectors that were actually driving the office market, like shared services sectors, not mentioning industrial, right? So I'm wondering, what's your personal takeaway on that?
True disruptors have this pesky characteristic that they're difficult to foresee. So I'm sure we're up for a number of upheavals in the future. I wouldn't dare to venture to define them at this stage. What I can say though is that, and that's kind of from the department of the bleeding obvious really, is that dispersed work models are here to stay. They are also reflected in how companies hire. Roughly 3/4 of employers now report that they are open to hiring either people that work fully remotely, or people who have a commute of up to 2 hours, i.e. they would not be expected to be in the office daily. At some intervals. So this is something that is with us here to stay. We will continue to kind of settle in this equilibrium. So again, the benefits will become more pronounced and the problems more acute. And I think going forward, the major challenge will be making sure that we as managers, as leaders are well prepared and have the right data and information to be able to respond to those complex challenges, to be able to adequately correct our course, because again, there's no one simple answer here.
So we can say that we are in the phase of a time where actually we agreed that this is a solution that will stay with us. It's just a matter of how to do it in an efficient way that serves both sides. In an ideal world, of course.
Yeah, but the risks and solutions to those risks will continue to evolve and will continue to be threatening. So I don't think we'll ever reach a state of nirvana where it doesn't pose any problems.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, on one hand, that's the question that employers has to answer, but I'm sure that we'll get to the point where also employees will have to know whether it's actually really good for them to stay in the situation with, for example, fully remote work, or maybe some other challenges that are impacting the market, like AI or others. Maybe that will be in their individual threat on their position in the job. So at the end of the day, it will be a new dynamics in the different fields. But, well, let's hope that at the end of the day, we'll find a new equilibrium that will be good for everyone. Thank you so much for the discussion. Very interesting topic. So I'm looking forward because it's annual report, right? So actually we can meet in 1 year and see where we are.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this fall is another from our series of hybrid work insights about the factors that influence office presence. Okay. So for people interested in return to office mandates and all the controversy around that, stay tuned.
Okay, fantastic.
It's coming in November.
Fantastic, so very soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.